Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to wait a few minutes because there's quite a lot of people still joining the meeting, so I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes for that to slow down before we get started. Just when I think it's stopped, somebody else pops up. Hello, everyone who's already with us. Welcome. I'm just going to check. I think we might have a few more people waiting in the lobby, so I'm just going to give it a moment before I start. Okay. I think we've got that slowed down now. So good evening and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar event this evening for parents of the college. My name is Jo Milsom. I'm Deputy Principal at the college, and I'm here this evening with my colleague Scott Gray, who's Vice Principal for Curriculum and Quality. We have prepared some material, some of which we already had decided we wanted to share, some of which is based off of the questions that some of you submitted in advance. So thank you for those, that was really helpful. We will go through our material and then we should have some time at the end if there's any other questions or anything we haven't answered for people to ask. We have Amy here from our marketing team who will help us out with all the technicalities as we go through the evening. I can see a few people are popping messages in the chat. Just to say, I'm not looking at those right now, but I'm sure Amy will have a look at those once we get everybody in. So thank you and welcome. We're really delighted to have so many of you join us this evening. It's really great to have that kind of parental engagement. We will talk quite generally this evening because with so many people here, we can't really get into individual circumstances. However, we will signpost you to the people in college that can help if we think that will be helpful for you at individual level, or we'll give you some contact details that you can try getting hold of tomorrow. So thank you for joining us. We're really looking forward to doing this. Okay, so let's get started then. So there's still quite a few people coming in, but I'm going to carry on anyway. So Abingdon and Whitney College, who are we, I suppose, is the place to start, and what matters to us, which I'm sure as parents you'll all be thinking about. On the screen here is a couple of pages from our strategic plan, and if I'm really honest, I probably wouldn't normally share that with parents, but I thought it was really relevant this evening because actually this is our mission, vision and values, and whilst they might sound like corporate jargon, they're actually really important to us because this is exactly how we try to run our college, and this is exactly what we stand for as far as we're concerned. So we are a further education college, and I will go on to explain why that's different to a school as we go through the webinar. We obviously offer study programmes for young people, mostly 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And for you, that will be your children or young people that you have responsibility for. But in addition to that, we also deliver lots of other education for the community. So we have probably about 700 apprentices linked to the college. We offer part-time adult learning right the way across the whole of Oxfordshire under our Oxfordshire Adult Learning banner. We offer higher education and professional qualifications at level 4, 5 and 6. Some of which are linked to Oxford Brookes University, some of which are programmes that we run ourselves. And that's really important for you to understand a bit about who we are and why we are different to a school. Our core values that are on the screen here genuinely do drive everything that we do, and we do our very best to live and run our college by these values. So whenever we're talking about a policy or a procedure or a decision that we might be making as part of the senior management team, we always have these values at the heart of what we do. And our hope is that by doing that A, we set up our organisation to deliver the things that we have set out to run in our strategic plan, but also that this means that all of our staff are on board with those values. And then we also hope that they will rub off onto our students, your young people as well. And then we, create this wonderful virtuous circle where we're doing some real good in the community. So that's a little bit about who we are. Oh, my slides have stopped. There we go. So how are we different from school? Well, I suppose the first things really is about the size, the range of students, as I've just explained, and the types of course that we do. In a school, everybody is identified by their age group. They're following largely a national curriculum that's set out by the government. And there isn't much deviation from that. Everybody stays with their year group all the way through their schooling. We are necessarily very different to that, and we run education programmes, and we are funded by programme rather than by age group, and we will work hard to make sure that we get the right student onto the right level of programme, and we will explain a little bit more about levels later on. But also because we have a broader range of students, as I've already explained, we've got adult learners here, we've got apprentices that might attend college in a very different pattern. We have to operate quite differently to a school, and that means that we necessarily have quite a different focus than a school would. I think the other thing that's different to school is that we do deliberately try to position ourselves as staff here in a different way to the relationship that your young person will have experienced in a school setting. So every staff member is known by their first name here. We treat them with the same level of respect as we would expect them to treat us with. And most of our rules about how people behave are common rules across the staff and student body. So, if we have an expectation about behaviour standards, we expect exactly the same of our students as we do of our staff. And that really just helps to give a slightly different, more grown-up environment, I think, for the students to come into. Most students have chosen to be here. Very few young people have a choice about going to school. So that's another obvious difference between us and a school. And they've usually chosen the subject that they want to study. And we're structured on our study programmes around industries and vocational areas. So you will have noticed this already. Your young person has chosen probably an industry or a vocational area that they want to go into, and that's the pathway that they will study. We do have some learners who haven't yet chosen a pathway, and they will be on an access to learning course. So they're currently understanding what their options are, and they'll spend some time this year looking at what options they have for vocational areas. But most of our students here are here on a programme that they've chosen to do because they want to go and work in that industry. And the government expects that of us as well, to be honest with you. They expect that we're training people to go into industries. So that's something that I always think sets us apart from schools a little bit as well. In school, it's more about education for the sake of education, which is a really valid reason to have education. It's a basic general standard of education that young people receive. And when they come to a college for their vocational education post-16, it's slightly different and it's more focused towards work. And you'll see that come through across a number of things that we're going to talk about this evening in terms of our expectations of how our young people behave and the things that they will learn when they're here. I'm going to hand over to Scott now for the next bit.
Thanks, Jo. So, as Jo mentioned there, in terms of how college operates, college is more than just the year groups, etc., that you'd be used to when you were in school. So if I can show you on the slide what a study programme looks like, it tends to be something that's around 600 hours per academic year. So you'll notice that our academic year runs quite similar to the school system in terms of from September to July. Around 600 hours is made up of a number of different elements to that study program. And as you'll be aware from what your young person's studying, they could be studying level 1, level 2, level 3, T levels, for example. And those hours in T levels are far greater than, for example, the average 600 hours. That's because there's things like industry placement in there as well. And it's a much bigger program in terms of the delivery of what's being expected of those young people. In the main, most study programs will contain a vocational qualification. So, for example, construction could consist of carpentry, plumbing, electrical, for example, just as examples, engineering, business, to name but a few. So I'm sure some of you across the college are studying completely different subjects as well. All of those vocational subjects will be examined in very different ways, and I'll explain that in a second as to how that's how you'll be assessed. But they are across that one whole academic year. So if you're on a level 3 program, for example, they tend to be over 2 years. So you might be in year 1 and then into year 2. And you might see that the course is labelled a diploma in the first year and an extended diploma into the second year. Part of the study programme is Maths and English for those students that have not yet achieved a grade 4 at school at GCSE. So part of the study programme is for those young people that haven't yet got those grades at grade 4 at GCSE. They'll study that alongside their main vocational subject. Again, you might have seen that on the timetables that they've been showing you when they've been coming home. So you'll see that on their timetables. Again, they'll look at that across the academic year. So we sit the exams at the same period of time, so in the summer and also November, and I'll explain a little bit more about how that works in a second. And then also part of that is either work experience or industry placement. So I mentioned to you there about the T-level students. So our T-level students study what's called an industry placement, which is a real hands-on project in real life working experience. And it's a real focus on different industries that those young people are going into. And in a lot of cases, those industry placements will then form part of a job after that T level at level 3, or the next level could be the apprenticeships that Joe mentioned to you earlier. But all of our young people on the programmes will study some form of work experience, and that might differ depending on the level of the programme that they're studying. So level 1 to 2 to 3 will all have different levels of work experience depending on that, and also depending on whether they've got their GCSEs as well. Alongside that, we look at the enrichment of our young people. So you might see on the timetables that it's got an enrichment session on there. So enrichment is far greater than just the qualification, it's the added extras. So the little bits, for example, in construction, so they're studying carpentry, but actually those that are working in the carpentry industry might need to understand how the electrical subjects work or how plumbing works, because when they go into the real life, they might have to be dealing with some jobs that enable them to use those other subject areas as well. So that could be an element of enrichment. It could be an enrichment that's worked with our enrichment officers that we have at the college. So it could be an outside example of a sports session that they can attend. It could be a guest speaker that comes in to talk to them about enrichment. There's loads of different elements of the enrichment program that exist across college. And also as part of the study programme, you'll see that they have a core session. So that's those personal and health matters and the wider world. So you might be used to that from a PSHE lesson that the young people would have had at school. So at college, we have a core session and they'll go through those areas that linked to their programme. And we do try and link it as well. So where there are those health and personal matters that actually occur within the wider scheme of things, we do actually try and link that where possible as well to their curriculum areas. So they've got a full rounded exposure to all those elements. I think that's the next slide, Joe. Sorry, we're going back to the COVID days. So I mentioned to you briefly previous slide around how assessments take place, and I thought it was really important that this evening we explain to you how the assessments work. For the majority of you, you'll be used to your young people doing SATs in the lower levels at school, and then all of a sudden they've just recently done their GCSEs, which predominantly are in a hall, sitting at a table, doing those papers over a long period of time, etc. And then the vast array of subjects, as Joe mentioned, as part of that national curriculum. It's really complicated, but I'm going to try and explain it the best I can to how assessments work. So the vocational subjects will have a variety of different methods of assessment. So it could be a practical assessment that's done in the workplace, for example, through the industry placement. So early years do practical assessments. You might have a carpentry assessment that's done in the workshops here, and the young person is asked to create something that's based on what the qualification is asking you to create. And then that will be assessed by one of the teachers to check competency around the grading criteria as well. It might be that there's a short online module exam. So some of the modules that the young people sit will have an exam that's linked to that. Again, carpentry is a great example of that, and some of the construction trades, they'll do health and safety exams that are online exams. And what's really interesting around that is they are what's called on-demand exams. So again, you'll be used to sort of that exam window where maybe the summer you've just had with GCSEs and they're all done at one time. A lot of these exams and assessments are done across the academic year. So they're on demand when the college feels that the students are ready to sit those exams, so they can be arranged then. Some online exams are set with a national time. So we will actually make sure that the young people are sitting those exams when everyone else is sitting them in the country. And that will be explained to you throughout the year as well. And they'll be given those dates across the year. Other elements that are done are written assessments or briefs. So it could be that they're actually given an assignment brief that's part of the qualification. That's how that qualification is assessed. Many BTECs that the young people are studying will have the assignment brief section, or could have projects. For example, when you do a project session, that will be set by a brief, and that tends to be a brief that's written by the college or the teachers that are studying that. So where they're studying that, the teachers will set the brief that will relate to a subject that they need to study, and then the brief will assess them on different criteria that's been set there. They'll have opportunities to resit those briefs as well. So if they didn't quite hit the criteria, there'll be an opportunity for them to resit some of those briefs. And it's similar to those short online module exams as well. So if they haven't quite hit the criteria of the online module exams, where they're able to be booked, then we can rebook them as well. And again, for the practical assessments, the majority of things can be resat as well if they don't quite hit the criteria the first time round. Controlled assessments are the interesting ones. So they tend to be in some of the T-level programs that we deliver, and they tend to be over a number of days and weeks. So you might find that in the summer that they sit a number of times in college, what's called a controlled assessment, which is a bigger brief. So it tends to be an employer set brief, so an employer project that's been set. They'll sit that over a period of time. And as I said, it might be longer than their normal college days. So they might be in for the average 3 days, and actually across the week, they're over across for 5 days to sit those assessments. But they are not like national exams in the sense of having to be sat at a certain day. They'll have a period of time that's being sat. So that's really key. I think there's some confusion sometimes where these controlled assessments are sat over a period of time. So they haven't actually missed the window. The window is quite a large window, whereas the GCSEs are sat on specific days. That's probably the best way to describe the differences to it. And then we've also got some formal exams that will take place, for example, in terms of English GCSE or Maths GCSE, that sit at the same time and date across the country as well. So they'll the different types that we sit here. What's really interesting is that they'll all be slightly different depending on whether they're studying certain different subjects. So they will start to get a list of the assessments and when they need to be completed. So as I said, the teachers really give you the dates and give you enough time and a window for those students to be able to complete those assessments and those criteria. And they'll also explain to the young people how they're going to be assessed. I think one of the things to mention as well is in terms of grading. So you're already just used to the GCSEs of the 1 to 9s. Now you're going to have to get used to pass, merit and distinction in the majority of cases. And even the T-levels is slightly different graded in the first year as it is to the second year as well. So there's lots of different nuances that the young people will be explained to them of how they're graded across the 2 years, or however long they're here in terms of studying their courses. Specifically around English and Maths, really important to talk to you about English and Maths. So as one of the conditions of funding of the study programme, students must study until they achieve a grade 4 in one of those subjects, be it English or Maths, if they haven't got those grades when they arrive here at college. Most students we do sit the GCSE. In a small number of cases, we sit functional skills. And the reason for that is because they're used to studying that GCSE. It is the condition that students should be assessed on, and the level that they should be assessed up to. Most employments will ask for GCSE grades. Most universities will ask for those GCSE grades. So it's really important that we try and keep on that momentum of the GCSEs from the fact that they come from secondary into the college environment. However, in some of the areas, I've mentioned construction a lot there, because of the next step tends to be an apprenticeship. We do have a small group of students that will study the functional skills up to level 1 in those areas. However, once they've got that level 1 in functional skills, if they remain with us in college, they'll have to study again on to that GCSE to get that grade 4. So it's really important we try and stick to the GCSEs as much as we can. So that's anyone with a grade 3 and below that has to do the GCSE resit. We use Edexcel for maths and we use AQA for English. So I'd appreciate some cases they would be studying different awarding bodies at the schools that they've come from. With that in mind, we've got our November resit that we provide. So for those students that are within 20 marks of a grade 4 in maths and 15 in English, we will allow them to sit their resit here at college. As long as they are with one of those 2 awarding bodies, so AQA for English and then Edexcel for maths, we'll allow them to study here and sit that resit. It's really important that they attend 100% of those lessons, and also the revision sessions. They're really key. They've obviously spent the summer where they haven't been focusing on their English and maths, and I'm sure you can appreciate it's a really small window for us to get them through into the November resit. It's a really good opportunity for that group of students to have another attempt at it. The reason why we use that sort of benchmark is because in terms of boundaries, we'll lower slightly in that period. We can't put a finger on what that boundary will be, but they will lower them slightly potentially in that period. And those students that are within that sort of benchmark are likely to get an opportunity to get that grade 4 that they would need to study and complete their GCSEs. And then everyone else will resit in May and June. So everyone else that's studying on that GCSE programme will sit in line with everyone else in college to sit in May and June for their GCSEs next summer. It's really important the behaviour and the standards and expectations that we set at college. You'll see on there, it's our motto in terms of be ready, be respectful and be safe. So our ready, respectful, safe, that we, not only for our staff, and I know that Joe mentioned to you around that, how we work between the staff and students, but our staff and students apply that rules across the college. We are preparing these young people for the workplace. In the majority of cases, their next step is into work or the higher level qualifications that enable them to get into work. So we're really trying to give them that full rounded experience of being here. So it is really about preparing them for those next steps, even when they're going through the different levels. So if they enter us at level 1, for example, it's around enabling them to get to those next levels. So then in most cases, a step off point is level 2 into employment of some description. So it's really important that we're supporting them to do that as well. There's a commitment to the course, respecting each other, and also the common understanding of keeping each other safe. So it's really important that everyone's keeping each other safe. You might have found that your young person's come home with some information around a uniform that they need or equipment that they need for their qualification. That's really important. Could be health and safety related, be it construction. It's really important that those young people have got that equipment. If people need support around that, then you can talk to our student support team, but it's really important that they have those. And again, it's setting those standards and expectations. So it's really important that if they're going to that workplace, for example, in the construction environment, in hair and beauty, for example, that they've got those professional standards and they've met those professional standards whilst being at college. It's about them taking ownership of the learning and the work. I think we're at that stage. You know, they've done the school system, but also now at college, it's trying to get that balance and making sure that they're aware that the ownership is very much on them to enable them to reach those next steps. The college is here to support, as you are as well, to support them at home. But it's really important that they take ownership of that learning and work. So timekeeping, that they're here as much as they can be and that they should be, that they're in the right place, that they keep on top of their assignments, that those assessments, that they're there in the right place for those assessments. Again, all of this is constantly drilled in through them in terms of their tutorial sessions that they'll have, as well as their progress coaches that support them to do that as well, and also the communication we have with you at home as well. There isn't really a rule of thumb in terms of how much work outside the classroom, but it's really important that you can imagine that the level of qualification that they're studying is going to be really important, that you're supporting them at home as well to enable them to understand what they need to be doing at this current time. You'll see those assessment deadlines that they'll have coming through the year. You'll know when some of those exams will be. So it's really important that you support them as well at home. but it's about them taking ownership, so you can appreciate if they've been doing homework through school, actually in here, how much work are they going to need to do to support them as well. So it's really important that we do that to support them from home. We want to encourage them to do every opportunity to learn and grow and try new things. College is a fantastic opportunity for them to do that. Appreciate it's a new experience for some of them. They've just joined us recently over these past couple of weeks. And it's very different to school. There isn't a school bell, for example, that enables them to understand when the next lesson starts, because all the lessons start at different times throughout the day. Their friends might be studying at different times or on different days as well. So it's very different for that model. But there's great opportunities for them to have great employer engagement activities. Some of the examples of some of the employer work that we've had over the years, and the experiences that the young people have had to work with those employers that they wouldn't necessarily have had when they were at school. The support from the tutors and the teachers, they're really experienced. The teachers that are at college, they love what they do, and that's why they're here to teach these young people. They really want to give them the best of their knowledge to support them. I've spoken a lot about the construction industry, but you can appreciate the individuals that are teaching the construction students have been on the tools, they've worked in the trade, and they try to give them that first-hand experience of what to expect. Across the piece, some of our art and design lecturers are still practicing in their professions. We have a number of hourly paid lecturers that not only teach here at college, but also carry on with their professions outside. So it's a real great opportunity for everything that they can get here to grab it with both hands. We ask students just to be polite, be courteous and kind to everyone. The basic principles of what you'd expect. Again, it's about enabling them to be in that workplace, not only just to staff, but to visitors, to the local community. You can appreciate it's a big college, it's a big environment. Also, when they're on their work experience, they are representing the college when they're on that work experience. And in a lot of cases, those young people get opportunities to go back to those work placements for full-time jobs at the end. So it's really important. We ask the basics of wearing an ID badge. You can appreciate the volume of students who walk around the college at the staff. So whether that's a visitor wearing their ID badge, the expectation is everyone wears their ID badges, and it's not just another thing. It's another thing to make sure to keep them safe, but to identify them. Again, it goes back to that preparing for the workplace. I'm sure some of you are in the industries where you're having to wear lanyards to enter buildings, offices, etc. The same rules apply here. It's really enabling them to develop everything that they can. And there's all those we want them to be mature about what they're doing here. I appreciate it's a very different environment, a different experience, but we want them to be mature about what they're doing here. And there are people that they can talk to throughout. There's our student support. They've got progress coaches. They've got their lecturers, their study program leads. There's lots of people they can talk to make them feel safe. But there's lots of things for them to be here, and we just want them to enjoy every element of college life. Parent Hub. So Parent Hub is where you can access a lot of information around the college. There's examples on the screen there from accessing from the website. So you'll see the main banner of the website. And then if you click on the person at the top, you'll be able to then, it will open up the tabs at the top there. The Parent Hub is via the website. The young person needs to give you access first. The young person owns that information, as you can appreciate. It's their college record, but they need to give you access to enable them to do that. So they'll need to add you as a contact on the Learner Hub, but they should be able to show you how to do that as we move forward. So what I would say around the Parent Hub as well, that I haven't really touched upon, is we will conduct a progress review at the end of the first term. So at the end of this first term in December, the study program leads will conduct a progress review on how the young person's actually doing in their subjects, so in their main curriculum, but also in their English and maths. So give you an overall view of how they're performing, a bit like your parental reports that you might have received through school previously. And then in January, when we return after the Christmas break, we'll invite you in at the end of January, February for a consultation evening, where you can come and have a conversation around that progress review meeting, around how they're getting on and they're performing in their course. And you can ask any questions that you've got there as well. And then later on in the academic year, around the end of the spring term, April, May time, we'll do an update on that progress review, a slightly smaller version of the report, but it just gives you an update then at how they're doing at that point. Coming towards the end of that first year in college could be the end of their course, and they're moving on to talk about the next steps. So it gives you an opportunity to start talking about those next steps as well, and where they'll be going, but gives you that full information. So slightly different to school, but enables you to have those conversations, because we really want these conversations with you as the support networks at the home, to be able to give us the support from an all-rounded experience, not only in college but also from you guys outside as well.
Great, thanks, Scott. Back to me for a bit now. We thought it would be helpful if we just explained a little bit about courses, levels and progression options. We appreciate that young people have only just started on their programmes last week, but we will start talking with them about next steps relatively soon. Usually by Christmas, we will start getting them to think about what they want to do next. So as parents, we thought it was important for you to understand this. It is a little bit complicated, so I'm going to try and simplify it as much as possible for you. The table that I've shown on the screen explains about different education levels. It does also contain some language that describes different types of courses, such as GCSE, BTEC, NVQ. My advice would be that the type of course, GCSE, BTEC, NVQ, for example, is less important. What's more important for you to understand as parents is the levels. So your young person will most likely be enrolled on a level 1, 2 or 3 course with us, and that's why you've come to this event this evening. And that will be determined by either the number of GCSEs they've achieved at a certain level, or on their vocational experience in a particular subject. For example, in some of our skills-based courses, such as, to use Scott's example, carpentry. Again, we talked a lot about construction, but carpentry and some of the hair and beauty courses, for example, they're what we call skills-based courses, and you need to develop the practical skills, and often young people come with none of those skills yet developed unless they have had some significant exposure to woodworking or something like that outside of college. So often in that scenario, regardless of how they've got on with their GCSEs, they will start at a level 1 and they will build up their skills through the levels over sometimes 2 years, maybe to an apprenticeship. Other courses that are perhaps a bit more academic and not so skills based will have entry criteria based around GCSE grades, and that really is so that we can make sure we are putting them on a course that's at the right academic level for them, and so that we are giving them the best opportunity for success and not inadvertently setting somebody up to fail by putting them on a course that's too difficult. Equally, we want to make sure that we're not putting them on a course that's too easy, because we want everybody to be stretched and to achieve their full potential. So there is a balance there, and we do have some published entry criteria. Every now and then there'll be somebody that fits outside of that criteria for a variety of reasons. And often Scott and I will be involved in decisions around whether that young person should go, which course they should go on. It's quite nuanced. There'll be a lot of context to take into consideration. My advice would be, if you're in that situation, please know that we're always simply trying to do the best by the young person. We both really care about this, and that's why we do the jobs we do. And we are bringing years of experience with us, and we will be trying to look at a broader context to make sure that we make the right decision for your young person. So going back to the complicated picture on the screen with levels, generally most young people who come in from school with a good clutch of GCSEs, so they've achieved probably 5 or more GCSEs, will come in and do a level 3 qualification. That will last them that will take 2 years, and then after that they will probably progress out to work or university or another kind of higher education, perhaps not straight off to traditional university. Maybe they will do something like an HNC or a higher technical qualification, which is at level 4 or above. So it's the next level up in their learning within their subject, and can be equated to university levels, but doesn't necessarily mean they have to go off to university if that's not what they want to do. Just so that you know, about 25% of our students do go off to university when they've completed their level 3. That's roughly in line with the rest of the country, to be honest with you. Some learners who haven't been so successful at their GCSEs will need to work on a level 1 or 2 to be able to get them there. Those qualifications are very much about stepping stones and helping them to build up to their levels. We do also offer levels at pre-level courses at pre-level 1. Mostly they are for our students with significant special educational needs, of which we do have quite a lot at the college. We have some very discrete and specialist provision for some of those learners, and we do our very best to try and help those learners make it onto these level 1, 2 and 3 courses as well. So if you're thinking sort of in a few months' time about conversations with your young person about what comes next, hopefully having a little bit of an understanding about levels will help you. If they're on a level 1 or 2 course, that's just going to be 1 year, that they will need to have a new course for next year. We really hope that they'll do really well this year and they'll be able to go up a level, but sometimes that's not the case and they need to go sideways to a different level, different course on the same level first, and then they can go up. If it's a level 3 course, it's almost always going to be 2 years, and then they will progress on after that. Options from a level 2 or a level 3, apprenticeships, higher education, professional qualifications. So there's a good range of opportunities for young people out there, but we will start talking to them about their next steps by Christmas at the latest, really. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about people you need to know about in college. This is just a really simple chart that shows the structure that we have within each of our faculties. So we have a head of faculty, and then under the head of faculty, there'll be a curriculum manager who will manage the curriculum on a day-to-day basis. In between them, there is a super important person, the faculty administrator. They're really helpful for delivering messages for you, getting hold of somebody, letting you know when someone's going to be available, to speak to you if you need to speak to somebody, or anything to do with trips or buying kit or uniform or anything like that. The faculty administrator is a super important person. The curriculum manager runs the day-to-day operations of the area of the college that your young person is in, and then they will have reporting to them a number of people in different roles. One of whom is the study programme lead. They have responsibility for the whole package of education that your young person is here to study. So their vocational qualification, the maths and English, work experience or industry placement, and enrichment, and the PSHE stuff that Scott was talking about earlier. They have responsibility for all of that, and they're probably, from an academic perspective, your main contact if you want to talk about how your young person's getting on with their learning or any concerns that you've got. The progress coach is a pastoral support role, so they're focused really on your young person's well-being and more softer skills. Are they developing the independence that we think they need to be successful on the course and that we all need to go out to work? And they also will be a key contact for you if you have any worries. They also can sometimes be a little bit easier to get hold of than a study programme lead or a teacher, because they will be timetabled less during the college week. So they should have more time to give you a call back or drop you an email, whereas the study programme leads and the teachers and the curriculum managers will all be teaching a little bit more than them. So progress coach is important. And then your young person will have probably a number of other teachers that will be teaching them various elements on their programme. This might be because it's their specialist industry knowledge. Scott's talked about the sort of industry backgrounds of all of our teachers. So it could be that there's something very specialist that they know about, so they teach a particular unit, or it might be how we've decided to divide up the modules that need to be covered on the programme. I would say, unless your query is very specifically about something that that individual has taught, probably they're not a main contact for you. But there might be a scenario where we say, actually, you need to speak to John because he's the best person to answer that question. So, but in most cases, your key contacts are going to be your study programme lead and the progress coach. And you're probably all thinking, brilliant, how do I get hold of these people? So your young person should have received last week a course handbook, which has a section of key contacts in there, and all of those contacts details should be in their course handbook. If they're telling you that they don't know where their course handbook is or they haven't received one, ask them to either pop a message on their course teams. So we use Microsoft Teams for all of our communication, and they will be in a team that's related to their course. Usually it's saved as a document within that team. But if they can't find it, they can post a question in the chat function of that team and ask their teacher to signpost them to it. That's probably the quickest way for them to be able to get hold of the course handbook if they've lost it or they can't remember what it is. I'm seeing some of the messages in the chat. As a parent of recent teens, I feel your pain when they say they don't know what the answer is to something. But yeah, the course team is a really good place to start for anything like that. Assessment schedules, any kind of information. I would say their starting point should be their course team. Okay, then just in the wider college, we also have quite a lot of people that are here to help your young person and make sure they can be as successful as possible on their course. So we have a student services team who does what it says on the tin, really. They're here to make sure that our students have got all the support they need. They run the libraries. They provide access to additional pastoral support. They deal with safeguarding, and they manage our receptions, and generally are on the ground a lot, so they know a lot of young people around the college. Our careers team are based in student services as well, so if you want advice on next steps, that is where that will come from. We have a learning support team, our SEND support team, a very large team of staff who are here to support those learners with additional learning needs. And we've got some contact details for you at the end of the slides if you're interested in that. We have study coaches who are here to coach your young people on specific aspects of their course, so they can help with writing assignments or checking that they've answered a question properly. The students can self-refer to that and they will know where to go for that. We have our SENCO for students with education healthcare plans. We have 3 SENCOs. If you have a young person with an education healthcare plan, hopefully you already know who your SENCO is, or at least who your transition worker is, and they should be able to give you a window into your SENCO if you don't have that contact already. And if not, then there is a contact address at the end that you can contact if you haven't made any of those connections yet. We have a college nurse that comes in once a week. She's provided by Oxford Health. And we have a range of specialist therapists for speech and language therapy, occupational therapy and physiotherapy for young people with additional needs. So quite a lot of people around out there to support your young person. The other thing that's really, I think, as a parent, prominent at this age, they're growing up, they're on a journey to adulthood, and before you know it, they are going to be fully fledged adults, and you're going to feel a little bit out of control about what's going on in their life. We know that, we understand that, we go through some of these things with our young people every year, and we'll do everything we can to help you. It's best if we know early on when there's concerns. So if you're worried about something, please do contact your young person's teaching team, their progress coach or their SPL if you're really worried about something. If you have an urgent concern, you can contact our safeguarding team, and you can find their contact details on our website. They will pick up things urgently, but you know, these things do happen, and we'd much rather know about it at an early stage if you have a serious concern about lifestyle choices they might be making or a behaviour you think they're engaging in. We do cover some things on that in our core programme when we're teaching them about the wider world and how to make sensible decisions. But inevitably, some young people still make decisions that we'd rather they wouldn't. So we understand that. There's no judgment on our part, I promise you. We've worked with thousands of young people over the years, and we understand that this is what happens sometimes. So we'll talk about drink, drugs and substances as part of that. We will try to talk to young people about nutrition. But as parents, I know it's hard, but anything that you can do to get them eating sensibly. I do have a moment in the mornings when I'm doing meet and greet on the door and I see them walking in with a massive can of Monster or something like that. And I just think, oh gosh, please. I know it's really hard to get some young people out of bed in the morning, let alone to eat something sensible. But it is a fact that we need some basic nutrition in order to be able to learn and perform well across all aspects of our life, and anything that you can do to support that will really help you. But if you're seriously worried about nutrition issues or for eating disorders or something like that, please do contact us and let us know. There are some common illnesses that are prevalent within this age group. Sometimes I look at the list of symptoms and I think, gosh, that could be any morning of the week before 10 a.m. for most young people. And I think bottom line, I would say to you, with some of these serious conditions, you know your young person best. You know when something's not right. If they've got some persistent symptoms that you don't understand, really do everything you can to get them to see your GP. Even if you can't go in with them because they don't want to talk to you, it's better that they see somebody than nobody. So we would sort of urge you to get them to see a GP if you're worried about anything at all. If they're taking any medication that you think it's helpful for us to know about, please make sure their study programme lead or their progress coach is aware of that. And it can be difficult to tell at this age, so please never feel embarrassed to ask us a question around that. Just thought I'd touch quickly on learning to drive, because I'm sure lots of your young people will be thinking about learning to drive soon. I'm sure some of you will be desperate for them to drive so they can be a bit more independent. Taking driving lessons during the college day is fine with us as long as it doesn't clash with the lesson. If they've got gaps in their day, though, we're really happy for them to use that time sensibly and have a driving lesson. But please make sure they're back in time for their next lesson. And also just to say that some of you might be aware that we have in the last couple of years done quite a lot with our students around safe driving, off the back of some tragic situations that have happened locally. And we do have some work out there with Thames Valley Police at the moment that our students did last year. And we had some work with Sky News as well around the work that we do with students to try and encourage them to drive more sensibly and be a sensible passenger when their friends are driving at this age. It is a really risky time for them, and anything parents can do to help that. But if you just Google Thames Valley Police, Abingdon Whitney College Safer Driving, some combination of those words, I promise you'll find a video that our students made, and you'll find some information about that, which you can perhaps talk about with your young person if you find that that's something that's important for you to cover. Okay, right. We're coming towards the end, and we will have a few minutes for some questions. I know we've tried to answer some questions in the chat. These are some of the frequent questions that came through in advance that I don't think we've covered in the rest of the presentation. So I'm just going to whiz through the answers. Can they do a GCSE resit in November? Depends on the circumstances, potentially yes. And there is an earlier slide that you'll be able to get because we're recording this, which explains the circumstances in which they can do a November resit for their GCSE. How much homework should they be doing and how should they submit their work? These were popular questions. I'm afraid I'm not going to give you a straight answer, because how much work should they be doing depends on the qualification, where they're at in the year, and how they are performing so far. So as Scott talked about, we are preparing our young people to go to the world of work, and employers repeatedly tell us that they need young people entering the workforce to be more independent. Therefore, it's really important that we encourage young people to be reflective about the work that they are doing and whether that is measuring up to the expectations of their teacher. So they'll get feedback on every piece of work they submit. And our advice is that they read that feedback carefully, they think about how they can improve and the things that they've been advised to work on for next time. That might mean that they need to do more work than they have been. And I often have a conversation with young people about GCSEs, and they will say to me, my mum says I don't do enough revision at home for my GCSEs. And so I will say, well, how much revision did you do for each subject in the summer? And they'll tell me, and I say, and how did you get on? Oh, well, I only got a 3 or I only got a 2. And I said, and so my answer will be, well, that wasn't enough then, was it? So I think that's a really simple measure. If their work that they're doing in class, if they're doing some mock assessments, for example, and they're not getting the grades that they want to be getting, they're not doing enough work and they need to do a little bit more. That's how we all function in our work life. We know when we're not performing in the workplace, because our boss will usually point that out to us, and we'll know we need to work a bit harder and we need to do a bit more. And so we're trying to develop those skills with them. So there aren't set amounts of homework to do. Sometimes it will be really clear that there's a piece of work that needs to be done for the next lesson. And if that is the case, they'll be told how to submit that piece of work or whether to bring it with them. They might submit it through Teams, but there's not one way of submitting work, because some of our work might be physical. If it's a piece of work that they've had to create a practical thing, it might be written, it might be a video, it might be a recording, it could be a range of things. So there isn't one way that they do it, and there isn't a set amount of homework. It's more about understanding how they're performing and adjusting their level of effort, I suppose, accordingly. If your young person had exam access arrangements for their GCSEs in school, We can try to get them the same exam access arrangements here, but it doesn't automatically follow, and they will be spoken to this week about that. But also you can contact our Support for Learning email, which is coming up in a moment. Work in industry placements, this varies between courses. I know in the chat some people are asking quite specific questions about certain courses. Those specific questions will need to be addressed to the faculty team. It's too much detail for Scott and I to get in here because it does vary, and we'll point you in their direction at the end of the presentation. All of our students have to do some form of work experience or industry placement. We will support them to find a placement, but they do need to do some of that work themselves. And our staff will start talking to them fairly soon, depending on when their placement block is planned within the year. And we will give them some examples, some ideas. In lots of cases, we've got a good bank of employers that we're used to working with. In other cases, if they want to do something that's a bit more niche, then they might need to go out and be a bit more independent about finding some contacts. But we will provide them with information about that as the year goes on. Timetables, in an ideal world, I'd love to be able to say, yes, they're fixed for the year, but the reality is they're not. And we might need to change things as the year goes on. We'll always try and give you as much notice as possible about that. But the practical nature of some of the work does mean that things do sometimes need to change. And we will do our very best to give you notice. If you have a young person with an education healthcare plan that involves transport arrangements, we'll absolutely prioritise making sure you get the most notice possible, because we understand how difficult it can be to change those arrangements. So we'll always make that our last resort. Applying to university, yes, we cover that as part of their core programme at the appropriate point. It will usually be at the end of year one of their level 3 programme, so that when they come back in the autumn term for year 2, they can start to write their personal statement. We love it if they start writing their personal statement over the summer, but lots of young people don't. But that's where we'll start talking to them about that. And there were lots of questions about enrichment opportunities. Scott talked earlier about the kind of industry related enrichment that we provide on the programme, but we also do have cross-college enrichment. We have an enrichment officer at each site, and your young person will have been shown where they sit and how to find out the timetable of activities. Again, if they say they don't know where this is, tell them to have a look on their team, or tell them to pop into student services next time they're in college, and they can meet the enrichment officer and see the schedule of activities for themselves. Oh, gosh, right. So that's the planned. Let me just show you the next slide. So it's got a couple of contact details on it. Set support for learning if you have a SEND related query, so special educational needs related query. And that QR code takes you to our website, which covers financial information if you want to apply for free school meals or bursary, or have got some questions about that. There's also a whole load of other contact details in that section of our website as well that will probably be helpful for you. Scott and Amy, is there any questions you've spotted in the chat that you think are quick that we could answer?
Just having a quick look now. I think we've answered quite a lot of them.
So we'll look into the issues around the Parent Hub, and we'll get something sent out or shared with students tomorrow for you. The Commonleys canteen does offer more than paninis, I promise. I can't tell you what the menu is because I don't know off the top of my head, but I was there the other day and I saw students eating stuff from the canteen that wasn't paninis. But I have to confess that any time I go to the canteen for lunch, it's a given that I'm coming out with a panini because I just get sucked in by them. So we've all got our weaknesses, haven't we? But I promise they do more than that.
There's questions around GCSEs and who to contact. I'm assuming it's the course lead.
The study programme lead for immediate contacts around the GCSEs. There were some questions in there that somebody in particular, I think it was Charlie, I thought your question was quite specific and I didn't want to get into too much detail. So I would suggest for your son in particular, because that sounded quite a specific scenario, speaking with their study programme lead. There's lots of things that help us make the decision about GCSEs or functional skills, and it's quite nuanced, and there's a lot of context in each situation, so it's kind of difficult to generalise. Apprenticeships post level 3, I was going to say we have a whole team that deal with apprenticeships. So if as your young person's getting towards the end of this year and they want to look at a higher level apprenticeship, we can absolutely support them with that. They should have a careers advisor going into their class by that point to talk about next step options. But on our website, we have a contact team, and we have like a candidate pool for apprenticeships for people who are interested, and students can just go into that in advance. And then as the opportunities come up through the year, because employers might decide at different points in the year that they want an apprentice, then our recruitment team for apprenticeships will contact you and have that conversation.
There's one about how many hours support do you offer before EHCP requirements kick in?
Not as straightforward as that. It will vary. If you are worried, I would suggest you contact that Support for Learning email address and just start having a chat with somebody now if you're worried. Yeah, there's no hard and fast rule because it will depend on the course, the programme, the level, etc. But if you're having that thought now at week-in, I'd suggest you contact them and have a chat.
And I think the same will probably apply to the other question that says, when should a student who has EHCP apply to the college year 9, 10 or 11? And I think...
Yeah, so I would suggest come and have a look in year 9 or 10, probably. Depends on whether your school's got a sixth form and if you're planning on them going into sixth form. But usually I'd say come and have a look 2 years before you're going to come. And then you don't need to apply until the year before you're coming, and we'll have your EHCP for consultation probably at some point before you come. But if you just want to come to have a look and get a feel, then that's when I would do it. Okay, I think that's most of the questions that are general enough for this. Yes, Karen, we're recording this. It will be on the website for you, so don't panic. And I'm really glad that you, thank you for those of you that are giving us appreciation for this. And I'm sorry we didn't do it last year. We meant to, we just didn't get around to it. So we're really pleased that we've done it this year. And we'll promise we'll do it moving forwards. Lucy, your question about the canteen, I'm assuming you mean at Witney, because we have a canteen at Abingdon, we have a canteen at Common Lees. If I'm honest, I'm not sure we would reopen a serving canteen at Witney because we're in the town centre and all the students go off site to buy their lunch. So we end up with very little demand, but there will be a space where students can eat their lunch when our building work has finished. Brilliant.
Sorry,
thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We're really glad you've appreciated it. Please do, if you think of other things, please, contact one of the teams we've mentioned or through your young person's curriculum team. Please do keep the questions coming in. We know it's really different from being in school, and we hope that we've at least helped you understand some of that. Great. Thank you very much.